Ladies and gentlemen, I've crunched the numbers, I've run the simulations, and based on that, these are my 100% guaranteed accurate 2025 NFL season predictions. And if they end up being wrong, that must mean we slipped into a different timeline at some point, which isn't my fault. So let's get into it. We're gonna go through award winners, division predictions, playoff predictions, Super Bowl predictions, all that good stuff. So let's start it out hot with the MVP award. And my MVP is Joe Burrow. We know a couple things about the MVP award at this point, right? One, it pretty much always goes to a quarterback. An offensive skill player, or God forbid, a defensive player has to go through hell or high water just to get into that conversation. So it's a pretty safe bet with Joe Burrow because last time I checked, he is a quarterback. But the other thing that's starting to be true about the MVP award is it's kind of seeming like a your turn award in a sense. I gotta try to say this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm disrespecting Josh Allen because I really think Josh Allen might be the best quarterback in the NFL. But looking at the All-Pro selections, which are voted on by the same people that vote on MVP, they made Lamar Jackson the first team All-Pro quarterback, meaning they think he's the best quarterback in football, but they gave Josh Allen MVP. And the only explanation I can think of for that is they were kind of like, you know what, you should have an MVP by now, so we're going to give you an MVP. Using that information though, that does tell me that the voters, the committee, whoever's deciding these things, does take into account if you haven't won one before and if you seem like you're the type of player that should. Joe Burrow is that type of player. Joe Burrow's numbers last year were on par or better than every other quarterback statistically, but the Bengals were bad, which pretty much automatically disqualified him from actually winning MVP. I honestly think all Joe Burrow has to do is put up the exact same numbers he did last year. He could probably even afford to do a little bit less. And if the Bengals can just manage to squeak into the playoffs, he'll probably win MVP. Now, if I had to put money on who would finish second and third for this award, I mean, it would be a real shock if Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, even Jaden Daniels, and Patrick Mahomes weren't in this conversation this year. But in the interest of talking about some other contenders, let me throw these guys at you. I think Dak Prescott will be in the MVP conversation to some degree. The Cowboys are also going to have to throw the ball a ton. They have no run game. So I think he'll have the numbers to get there. I just don't know if the Cowboys as a team will be good enough. And then another guy kind of in this similar vein of having to throw the ball a lot, give me CJ Stroud. I think a lot of people expected CJ Stroud to ascend into that MVP tier last season after such a promising rookie year, and then unfortunately he just completely cratered the opposite direction. But that mostly seems like it was Bobby Slowick's fault, who's no longer there, and the offensive line's fault, who on paper doesn't necessarily look any better. But we're hoping that just schematically and with a new offensive coordinator and new O-line coach that they can get a little bit more stability out of that unit this year. And I still love CJ Stroud as a talent. The Texans don't really seem like they're gonna have a great run game. Joe Mixon might be clinically dead. Not really sure what's going on with him. So if they're gonna score a lot of points, it's gonna be with CJ Stroud's arm. And one thing in CJ's favor that is not in Burrow or Dak Prescott's favor is he has a really good defense. So that winning prerequisite, that making the playoff prerequisite that most MVP voters have is probably locked up for CJ. So yeah, my MVP pick is Joe Burrow. I think Dak Prescott and CJ Stroud will be in the conversation. Offensive player of the year, I will go with Jamar Chase. I mean, I kind of have to, right? If I'm picking Joe Burrow to win MVP, obviously Jamar Chase is going to be a massive part of that. Jamar really could have won offensive player of the year last year. I mean, most years winning the receiving triple crown will get you that award. Unfortunately for him, Saquon Barkley just absolutely lost his mind. And Lamar Jackson actually is the one that finished second place in offensive player of the year voting, which I still don't understand how they do that with the quarterbacks. So I don't know. Either way, he could have won it last year. I think he'll win it this year. A couple other contenders I want to throw out there. Bijan Robinson, I think he might just be the best running back in the NFL at this point. The Falcons are going to use him a ton. And Nico Collins, for the same reasons that I'm optimistic for CJ Stroud, I think Nico Collins can have a massive year. Such a talented receiver who managed to produce even in the unfortunate circumstances that Houston faced last year. Imagine what he could do in an offense that's actually functional and where he's healthy the whole year. Now, before we continue, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor for today's video, Underdog. Underdog just leveled up. You can now combine your favorite player picks and team picks without leaving the app. Pretty hyped for the games this week. Might have to cook up a spicy entry. Sign up today with code Bran and play $5 to get $50 in fantasy bonus funds. Team picks, player picks, all on Underdog. Defensive player of the year, this might be a little bold given the circumstances right now, but I'm gonna go with Micah Parsons. As of this recording, which is about a week before the NFL season starts, Micah Parsons is maybe not gonna play week 1. My gut feeling though is that this gets resolved in the early portions of the season, leaving him plenty of games to, make his case for this award for whatever team he ends up on when that's happening. And I think when he finally does step on the field, the man is going to be motivated. He's gonna wanna prove everybody, mainly Jerry Jones, wrong for mistreating him the way that he has. And I've picked Micah Parsons to win Defensive Player of the Year the last couple years just because I know how talented he is and it just seems like he's due for it eventually. So why not this year? There will be some other usual suspects in contention for this award, your Myles Garrett's, your TJ Watts, but let me offer up some other dark horses for this one. First, my boy, Christian Gonzalez, second team All-Pro corner last year. I think this Patriots defense and Patriots team just overall is going to be much improved. And with him him already having a second-team All-Pro under his belt, I think the spotlight will certainly be on him to win an award like this, a la Patrick Surtain last year. And then the other guy I want to throw out there, and maybe an extra sort of dark horse, but a guy that I know is really good, Brian Burns. That Giants defensive line is going to be a problem this year. Between Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, offensive lines are going to have to make decisions on who they want to prioritize. And that's going to open things up for everybody at different points throughout the game and throughout the season. So I just wanted to throw him out there as a guy who I think could have really monstrous sack numbers this year and who's maybe not getting talked about as much as some of these other premier pass rushers. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. It's Ashton Jeanty. The guy might get 400 touches on an offense that I don't think is going to be that bad, with an offensive line that I don't think is as bad as people make it out to be. It's definitely not good, but I don't think it's like bottom 3, bottom 5 in the league like some people seem to think it is. So much talent with Ashton Jeanty, so much opportunity with Ashton Jeanty. The numbers are going to be there. I think he runs away with this award. Other contenders here, obviously we have to talk about Cam Ward, the only rookie quarterback starting as of week 1. If he has even an average to slightly above average season, he might be the favorite for this award just because of how every award really favors quarterbacks. And then Ted McMillan. I think the Panthers offense is going to continue taking steps forward even though their defense is terrible. But because their defense is terrible, they're going to have to score a lot of points. They brought Ted McMillan in to be that alpha receiver. Again, you're looking at a lot of talent, a lot of opportunity in the form of targets, so he'll be right here in the mix. Defensive Rookie of the Year, how about Mykel Williams? This one's largely about scheme and just opportunity here. You know, he was drafted pretty high, 11th overall pick to San Francisco, but more importantly, they've got Robert Saleh coaching the defense again, and Mykel Williams gets to line up on the opposite side of Nick Bosa. Do you think offensive lines are going to be a little bit preoccupied stopping that guy? Yeah, I do too. I think there's going to be ample opportunity for Mykel Williams to rack up a decent amount of sacks this year, which we know award voters love. So I'll go with him as a little bit of an out-of-the-box selection because obviously the prohibitive favorite is another contender for this award, Abdul Carter. I just got done talking up the Giants D-line, and Abdul Carter is going to be another guy that feasts on that line because of just how loaded it is. So of course, he's going to be in this conversation. And then I'll go with Jalen Walker as another guy to watch. The Falcons have been desperate for anybody that can pressure the quarterback. If Jalen Walker proves he can do that, he's going to get the recognition for it. Coach of the Year, I gotta go with my boy, Mike Vrabel. Little spoiler alert for the division predictions and the playoff predictions. I do think the Patriots are going to make the playoffs this year. Bias, yes, but also actually think that, yes. And if they do, after what a dumpster fire last season was with Gerard Mayo at the helm, Mike Vrabel will get the recognition and credit for it if the Patriots do manage to make that leap this year. And I think they will, so I'm picking Mike Vrabel. Other contenders for this award, I think we can look at Sean Payton. You know, most of the time the guys that win this award are new coaches, right? Like they weren't coaching the year prior or they are first-time head coaches. But Sean Payton is one exception that I could see making a case for this award just because I think the Broncos are going to take another leap forward and be a real threat this year. I can see them contending for the AFC West. I guess another slight spoiler alert there. But the Broncos just seem to be loaded up and down their entire roster. It's hard to see a world where they truly flop this year. And if they do establish themselves as one of those top-tier NFL contenders, I think Sean Payton will get that credit for dragging them out of the Russell Wilson Broncos country let's ride basement that he found them in. And one other contender for this award, I want to throw out Pete Carroll. You know, he got booted out of Seattle unceremoniously and then now is making his return to the NFL with the Raiders. I hinted at it a little bit with Jeanty, but I think the Raiders offense is actually going to be pretty good this year. I like the core of Geno Smith, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, as long as he doesn't get traded. You know, the young guys, Dante Thornton, Jack Besh, and then with Jeanty in that backfield, I think they're going to score a good amount of points. The defense is definitely a question mark, but if the Raiders can find themselves in a mix for maybe a wild card spot, I could certainly see Pete Carroll in this conversation. How about assistant coach of the year? Let's really cover all our bases here. I'm going with Vance Joseph. For a lot of the same reasons I just talked about with Sean Payton and the Broncos, I think the Broncos are just going to be really good this year, and their defense is expected to be their calling card. It's as talented as any defensive unit in the league. It may very well be the best defense in the league. Other contenders here, I'll go with Texans offensive coordinator Nick Caley. I've already talked them up quite a bit in this video, but I do think he is up to the challenge of turning this offense around. He's a McVay disciple. That tends to work out pretty well. And then I'll mention Clint Kubiak. I'm excited to see what he can do with the Seahawks offense. People are very excited to see what he can do with that run game. He made the Saints look amazing for the first 2 weeks until injuries completely decimated them. And then even after that, he still got more out of them than he probably should have. And now he goes to the Seahawks, who have some exciting weapons in the form of Ken Walker, JSN. If he can turn this offense into something pretty productive, especially with it being led by Sam Darnold, who a lot of people, myself included, don't necessarily believe in, he'll definitely be in the mix for assistant coach of the year. Comeback player of the year. I gotta go with Christian McCaffrey here. I just think he's got one more healthy season at least left in him. And a healthy season for Christian McCaffrey usually means about 2,000 all-purpose yards. And that'll win you an award like this 10 times out of 10. So I do think he'll win it pretty easily, which is kind of unfortunate, if that's the right word, because there are some other guys who really deserve to be recognized for coming back from what they are coming back from. I'm talking about Aiden Hutchinson, devastating injury last year. We were all bummed that he couldn't lead that Lions defense into the playoffs and, you know, to a possible Super Bowl appearance. And then Dak Prescott. If I think he's going to be a dark horse MVP contender, he certainly has to be in the comeback player of the year conversation. And then how about protect Protector of the Year. Finally, the big boys get some recognition. I've mentioned this in videos in the past that I thought offensive linemen should have their own award. Now they finally do. Who's gonna win it? I am of the opinion that because this award is so overdue, and because some of these younger linemen are going to have so many opportunities to win it in the future, they're gonna give the first one to more of a veteran, aging guy who's running out of chances to win it. Not somebody who's undeserving and just giving it to them, for the sake of them being old. They'll be deserving as well. There are some really old, good linemen. One of them being Trent Williams. So I'm picking Trent Williams to win this award. Consistently one of the best linemen in the league. Probably not gonna play for much longer, so he is running out of time to win it. The other guy I would point to is Lane Johnson of the Philadelphia Eagles. Second team All-Pro last year and just a absolute tank. All right, now for my division predictions. I'm just gonna go through who I think is gonna win each division here. In the AFC East, again, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I do love my Patriots, but I'm going with the Buffalo Bills. They've been dominating this division for years. Their roster has only gotten better. I expect them to keep the crown. The AFC North, similar thing. I like the Bengals. I think they can make the playoffs this year, but the Baltimore Ravens are just too good. Health permitting, they will win the AFC North again. The AFC South, I guess I'm just big, boring boy because I'm going with the Houston Texans. We're just sticking with who won all the divisions last year, I guess. But I can't talk up the Texans defense and then this offensive, rebirth that I think they're gonna have without also predicting them to win the division. I think the Jags are gonna take a nice step forward with Liam Cohen, but their defense is just not good enough for them to make a real push yet. The Colts are in shambles with Daniel Jones. And the Titans, I like if Cam Ward's legit, but no, nobody's on the Texans level right now. The AFC West though, maybe I'm a Chiefs hater and I won't really deny that, but I am gonna go with the Denver Broncos. I just love their roster so much. They have at least a top 2 or 3 O-line in the league, a top 2 or 3 defense in the league. Bo Nix showed that he is much more capable of an NFL quarterback than I honestly thought he would be. Sean Payton has done an amazing job getting the best out of him. And I just think they're built to succeed. So I gotta pick them to win the division. I don't think it's gonna be by a lot. It'll be by like a game over the Kansas City Chiefs, if anything, if not just, them having the same record and winning by tiebreaker. But I will stick to my guns. I really like the Broncos, so I'm gonna pick them to win the AFC West. And then our wild card teams out of the AFC for the playoffs will be the Kansas City Chiefs, the New England Patriots, and the Cincinnati Bengals. In the NFC, let's start with the NFC East. Obviously, I'm gonna go with the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. They're too good of a team. I'm not gonna overthink this one. In the NFC North, I do have the Detroit Lions. Now, I wanted to pick the Packers. I did, and then I went through and, picked every game all season long to see where I landed after really seeing these teams' opponents and all that. And I ended up with the Lions, I think by a tiebreaker. I'm pretty sure I had 3 NFC North teams all at 11-6, and the Lions were one of them, and they ended up being the champion again. So even though I do think they're gonna take a bit of a step back this year with just all the coaching losses they've had, I still got them winning the division by just a little bit. The NFC South, I think it'll finally happen. I'm giving it to the Atlanta Falcons. They've been trying to build themselves up, take this step forward for years now, and the Buccaneers just keep not letting them do it. But I think this is the year. I like what they've done on defense. I'm a believer in Michael Penix, and I think they eke out the division over the Bucs by just a little bit. And then the NFC West, it's back to basics, baby. I'm giving it to the San Francisco 49ers. After a year off where basically everything that could go wrong did go wrong, I think they're gonna reclaim their crown in this division and restake their claim as one of the best teams in the NFC.
And then for the wild card spots, I've got the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Los Angeles Rams.
So that leaves us with this in the playoffs. I'm picking the Chiefs to beat the Texans. I may not be picking the Chiefs to win the division, but it would take a very dumb man to pick them to not win a playoff game at all. I'm taking the Ravens to beat the Patriots. Look, I'm taking the Patriots getting to the playoffs as a victory this year. I have no expectation that they need to win a game. And then I'm taking the Broncos to beat the Bengals. I love the Bengals. I would honestly be rooting for the Bengals if this situation came to pass, but I gotta be a man of my word. If I think the Broncos are this good, I gotta let them show it. I'm going to take the Ravens over the Broncos. I think playoff experience is just going to help them a lot here. And then I'm gonna take the Bills over the Chiefs. Josh Allen finally overcomes that demon, takes down the Chiefs in the playoffs, leaving us with the feel-good Ravens-Bills AFC title game. And I'm gonna go with the Ravens here. I think they're slightly more well-rounded of a team, but honestly, whoever wins this matchup, I would be very happy with. In the NFC, I'm gonna take the Packers over the Falcons, the Lions over the Vikings, and the 49ers over the Rams. Just picking what I think are really the better teams to win all those games. The Falcons get into the playoffs by virtue of it being the NFC South and a stinky division, but I still think the Packers are a better team than them. And then the other results I think just speak for themselves. I think the Lions are a more well-rounded team than the Vikings, and the 49ers just a better team than the Rams. I'm taking the 49ers to knock off the Lions and the Eagles to knock off the Packers. That leaves us with an Eagles-49ers NFC Championship game, a rematch from a few years ago when Brock Purdy got hurt, and I mean, all the 49ers quarterbacks got hurt. And as much as I want to say the 49ers get their lick back in this game, I think the Eagles are just too deep and talented of a team. I think they go back to the Super Bowl. And that leaves us with the Baltimore Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm going to take Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens to hoist the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the year. I think we're just overdue for one of Lamar or Josh Allen to finally hoist that trophy. I think this is the year. I think the Ravens have made the right moves on the defensive side of the ball, in addition to having an offense that is just so difficult to game plan for and stop, led by Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So I'm going with the Birds, baby. I guess they're both the Birds. I'm going with the scarier Birds, baby. So there you have it, my 2025 NFL predictions, completely accurate, 100% to the T. And if any of them end up being wrong, again, that means we slipped into a different universe or dimension, and I just can't control those things, so don't yell at me, all right? But I'm so excited. Football's finally here. Guys, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.